10 days in India, and here is what I've learned. I originally came to India for a wedding, so I flew into Mumbai, was there for a couple days, then was in Goa for the wedding, which is a sort of beachy community. Mumbai is much more busy. All the honks that we'll go into later, many of them happen there. Now I'm in Udaipur, and I'm going to head to Jaipur in a couple of days. But let's break down the first thing, honking. So in America, you might hear a honk sparingly, or when there's a honk, it's like, ooh, there's something wrong, or something collision's gonna happen, or something. In India, it's actually the music of the land. Whenever I've been in an Uber, for example, or a tuk-tuk, the honks are multiple times every minute. And imagine every single car doing that at the same time. It feels insane for someone like me that prefers quiet and peace. But it's kind of a way to say, hey, I'm here, or hey, I'm not moving, or hey, can you move? It's any sort of communication that you'd want to possibly have on the road is going to be happening in the form of a honk. And rarely did I hear anyone really lay on the horn. It's more so regular staccato honks to let people know anything you can imagine. Even when things are going great and they're not even moving or switching lanes, it's almost like, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm honking. That's how it goes. The second is getting gas is different here. So I was a little bit alarmed when we were getting gas at a gas station. My Uber driver, or actually it was Goa miles because they don't have Uber in Goa. Oftentimes the drivers like to run errands on your dime and on your time, which I learned. We were supposed to be heading to the airport, but instead we ran an errand of getting gas that took about 20 extra minutes with me in the car. And then I was instructed to get out of the car when we were actually getting the gas. And at first I was alarmed, like, okay, what is this? Like, why am I being asked to get out of the vehicle? And then I learned that it was to reduce a fire risk and it's to have the gas start at zero. So whoever's being charged for the gas actually gets a full tank. The third is cows. There are cows everywhere you look. I accidentally offended a Hindu person, a driver, because I said, hey, I'm noticing a lot of homeless cows. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, a lot of cows on the side of the road eating trash. And I really wasn't understanding if they're so well revered, why are so many of them hanging out with homeless dogs, right? And he brought to my attention that actually they're eating out of the trash because people typically put leftover food and scraps in the trash for the cows. That doesn't mean that the cows only eat the food, they're eating the trash too. It's something that's not really looked down on, eating out of the trash when it comes to animals. It's like, oh no, people know to put food in trash bins for them specifically. And when I first landed in Mumbai, I'll never forget seeing someone crossing the road with two cows on ropes. And then just on the side of the highway and roads, there are all these cows leisurely sitting down. And some of them even have a red dot on their forehead to symbolize that they've been blessed. And at one point, I got out of the car and pet one, just a cow out in the middle of nowhere. And I did see a lot of homeless stray dogs, some stray cats, but it was very interesting to see so many cows in the mix. And they're actually pretty quiet. They weren't mooing left and right. And just like you would see a dog cut across traffic. Cows were doing that too, sometimes alone, sometimes in packs. One of my drivers in Mumbai also dispelled slums for me. In America, we can think of slums as Slumdog Millionaire, that movie, and like, oh, these poor people that are living on dirt with really in these rickety shacks, when really location. In Mumbai, there are people who aspire to live in a slum in Mumbai. My driver, for example, traveled over 2 hours each way just to do the tour that we were on. So to be able to have the convenience of living in a slum in Mumbai is aspirational for some. And even though they're small shacks, maybe there's not electricity, there very rarely would be a toilet. If there is a toilet, then that's an upper class slum situation. There's a lot of communal activity, right? It's a place where you sleep and you would typically work outside of the home. The average costs for this, according to my driver in Mumbai, would be about 60 USD per month, which would be about half of the take-home earnings of the person living there. So I don't know how it works with forms and everything or proving proof of income. At least the people that I was interacting with were gig workers, where they work through different tour companies, for example. But yeah, let's say they're making 120 in a month, then they typically have multiple people in the household. You're not really meeting people that live in a slum by themselves, right? So they're sharing the home, and one person is in charge of rent, one person is in charge of food, and they collectively get by with those incomes compounded. The other thing I asked was around cars and transportation. How common is it to have a car? It was reminding me a little bit of Singapore, of the haves and the have-nots, where most people do not have cars. That pretty much is the case. According to my driver, 30% of people have cars, and usually they either have a car because it's for work purposes or they're just so wealthy, they're like, why not have a car in a place where people don't usually have cars? And then I asked her about motorbikes, and maybe 4 out of 10 people have motorbikes. It's still not very common. There is a lot of transportation in terms of bus. There's an above ground railway station that costs about 28 cents per ride. So when people have their commute, so let's say they're making 120 in an average month, about a third of that is going to transportation, roughly, right? About $30 in a month. Because another thing that you should know is people in India aren't working 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Maybe they are working 9 to 5, but it's 6 days a week. In Mumbai, at least, people typically took Saturday off. And then in places like where I am now in Udaipur, people are more likely to take Sunday off. Now let's talk weddings. So I initially came here for the sole purpose was for my friend's wedding. And a lot of what happened, we did not understand. They did not have an interpreter at this wedding, which apparently sometimes they do. But since we didn't have one, there was one aspect that was explained. So I really soaked it in. And it was this concept of seven. The ceremony is typically 5, 7 days. We went to a condensed one that was 2 days. And right before the commencement on the last day, there was this rule of seven where it seemed like they were trying to update it to seem empowering to women, but let me give you an example. One of the rules was that whenever the groom travel anywhere for religious purposes, he needs to bring his wife. So, okay, if you say that another way, the wife doesn't have a choice and she has to go with him everywhere for religious things at his whim. You know what I'm saying? So it's but I have a feeling that, being Americanized, this particular couple, I don't think they're going to follow everything to a T. I think hopefully my friend, the bride, will have autonomy. But also, it's actually deeper than that. It's binding people through 7 lifetimes. And I asked the question, well, what if they've already been together 7 lifetimes? And it's like, that's fine. Then something that I found really endearing at the wedding was this turmeric ritual. So it's really playful, where there are lotus flowers, like really big ones, that the groom and the bride sit in. And it's customary that all of their friends, or they need to be married though, are painting their faces with turmeric. And I know that my friend put a thick layer of face gel on so that it wouldn't stain her skin because she literally had more to do. That was only the first day before of the wedding experience. And it was just really sweet to see her mom getting all these petals of flowers and sprinkling them on her after the married folks had painted her face. It was just there was a sweetness to it. It was like, oh, that's cute. Also, my friend got so many jewels. So dowry, again, it's this sort of outdated idea that, okay, now you're married for life, you're committed, but if anything ever happens to your husband, you are okay because you have gold, you have jewels. So they still do that to this day. Yeah, you obviously need to keep it in a very safe place. And I also wanted to bring up transportation. So what are we on? Something like this? There are certainly cars, and then there are also tuk-tuks. So tuk-tuks are modes of transportation that I used in Thailand when I was living there for 3 months. And basically, it's like a cross between a motorbike and a car. There are not always doors. I saw some actually with doors, but there are not windows, even if there are doors. But usually the ones I've been in, they're totally open on the sides. You get in there, and then almost like a taxi, there, it'll tell you your mileage and everything. And there's no AC, obviously, and you are exposed to all the scents, all the sights, all the sounds, more so than if you're in a car where you could kind of roll your window up and have your AC on. So, for the purposes of being here, I say get in a tuk-tuk if you haven't already. It's an experience. And you can even book them through the Uber app typically. But I noticed in Mumbai, in South Mumbai, they were outlawed. You couldn't. And actually, I should mention there were some no honk zones in South Mumbai. But people were still honking, but it was less because apparently you can be fined. But I didn't really notice that really being enforced. But I think it's because they realize, oh, it's kind of touristy here, and not everyone is down with all the honks that we're used to given. Oh, yeah, and this is something so people approach elevators differently here. So you go into an elevator, and it's almost like instead of facing the door, so in America you face the door. Here, it's like everyone's in a circle looking at each other. I guess it's a sign of politeness to look at people and not have your back to them. It kind of makes sense in a way. And another thing you could say, this is around eight, is one of my tour guides was I was talking with him about the gig economy, and he said that he has wanted to start his own business with giving tours and things like that, but he's concerned, and this is such an entrepreneur dilemma, that once he becomes his own entity, then tour companies are going to view him as competition and not hire him. So there could be sort of like a famine for the feast if the feast ever comes, and it's a total rolling of the dice. So I gave him a proposition. I was like, hey, I'll pay you. And he didn't have Zelle, didn't have PayPal. I'm like, what about Wise? I've paid people in Thailand that are entrepreneurs through the Wise app. And he refused. He said cash only. So it's one of those things I've been having trouble. That's a whole other story with the ATMs here. I was able to withdraw cash once and not again. And then to change the PIN and do all that, it would take 5 days. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just not going to operate with cash. So he was saying cash only. And I asked, like, do you have a bank account? And he said, yes, but I don't do things online. That is a limiting belief that will keep him from having his business take off. So unfortunately, I'm not his coach, so I can't really coach him through that. It's something that I noticed that people, and he's not the only one. There are other people that operate, they're kind of stuck operating within these systems of hierarchy because they're constantly like, okay, like I either need cash, but it's like, hold on, how are you even gonna get the bookings from tourists? Word of mouth? No, like you need to have an online presence. So this is something that I see holding people in India back. However, if there's someone in India who takes the plunge to have an online presence, to understand how to open a Wise account, to be able to collect international payments, those are the people that have a chance of flourishing entrepreneurially here. So, hey, if you're in India, you're an entrepreneur watching this, take a note on that because I was ready to pay this guy probably more than he's used to, but he wasn't willing to open up the account that it would take for him to be paid better than he's normally paid directly versus through a third party. Last but not least, number 10 is henna. It's customary to get henna at weddings. And some people, it seems like they just get it for fun also. So I was at a Hindu wedding and there were a few pictures that the bride sent and I chose one. Unfortunately, the one that I chose, this woman said, I will not do it because it's Arabic. I honestly think the Arabic henna is more beautiful. There are lotus flowers and more like, like V shapes and things that I like. And then the Hindu henna is more rounded, which is cute. But there's like, I don't know, sophistication to the Arabic henna, I suppose, that I wasn't allowed to get. So anyway, you'll notice the dots, you'll notice the flowers, and then it has been wearing off faster down here. So this is part of the original right here when I got it at the wedding, and then that was in Goa, and now that I'm in Udaipur, I actually got some reinforcement. So all of this is new. But let me tell you this, I left the henna on for like 6 hours before I rinsed it off. When they say you only need 1 hour, but I was like, what? But you only need 1 hour. How does that work? How does it stay on? I got tips from the ladies working here that you put either mustard seed oil, that's the best, or if you don't have mustard seed oil, use lemon juice. And after it's been on you for 1 hour, then you squeeze it on and then you simply rinse it off. So last night, this was all yellow, all of this, and these are new too. All of this was yellow. They told me it'd be red, like, well, maybe it's a skin tone thing, right? Because I'm more pale than most people in India. But then it darkened. And then this morning I saw the staff and she said, oh, it's just going to continue to get darker as the days goes on. I'm like, oh, how long does it last? So yeah, I am excited, but no vigorous rubbing of this stuff because it will come off. It's not meant to be forever, but I do think it can last 1 or 2 weeks. That'll be a good fun thing. I'll give you a better look just in case you wanted to see. And I know a lot of people get them inside as well. I have that by mistake. I didn't get that because while it's drying, I was at dinner and it's like you want to still be able to drink and eat, which you can do when you have it on the outside. You're much more immobilized when you have it on the inside. And before we wrap up, I'll give you a bonus that I learned that India has not always been called India. That is a result of colonialization. Bharata is what it was called. India was used around the time that Columbus came around. I have 5 more days left in India. I'm planning to do another video in case I learn more to share with you about the culture and about the more practical, tactile, everyday things. Wishing you a beautifully connected day. Until next time.